Swamp Thing! We are back. The swamp is back. The green is back. So, we're halfway through. We're up to, this is episode 5. This is episode 5 of Swamp Thing. And we're more in depth now than we ever were with all of the characters, with the entire Murray clan and everybody. Like, we know more backstory. We have a little bit more information about certain people. And all the information that we've gathered led me to one specific conclusion, which I will talk about towards the end, but you could probably tell by what's in the thumbnail. Now, this particular episode starts. Let's just chop this up into pieces here. We'll start off with the Sunderland family, and Mrs. Sunderland. She was on the phone and she was talking to her husband. Her husband said that he was staying at a hotel because he had a business meeting or whatever. And he said that he's like, "Don't worry, honey, I'll be back in the morning." So when they hang up and pan out, you see that the sheriff is in his hotel room because him and the sheriff got a thing going on. We find out actually that the sheriff, that both Avery and the sheriff, they've had a thing going on even before Mrs. Sunderland came into the picture. The two of them actually used to date or fool around or whatever their situation was. And then when Mrs. Sunderland, when she came to town and she brought her family's money and her riches, Avery basically dumped the sheriff and ran for her, ran for her. So that's how that whole thing happened. Mrs. Sunderland, she has little Susie Coyle up in the bedroom, and Susie was basically like screaming because she was trying to go to sleep, and then she started screaming. Mrs. Sunderland goes upstairs to check on her. Susie's just like, "Oh my God," she's just like, the girl was talking to me. And then Miss Sunderland's like, "What girl are you talking about?" And then she was just like, "The girl that's in all the pictures downstairs." So Mrs. Sunderland's just like, "Nah." So she goes, she's just like, "I'll just get you a blanket. You're probably cold." She goes to get a blanket. She comes back. Susie's gone. She goes into the bathroom, and then when she goes into the bathroom, she sees Susie in the bathtub. Bathtub's full of water. Mrs. Sunderland starts freaking out, and then all of a sudden, the girl sits up, and it's not Susie. It's actually Shauna, her dead daughter. And Shauna was just like, "Mom, I missed you," and this, that, and the third. So, and because Mrs. Sunderland is basically like mentally disturbed over the fact that she lost her child, it's like anybody else would have just been like, "What's going on?" and been scared. Mrs. Sunderland was just like, "All right, cool." So she, she embraced her child, and she's just like, and it's like it's weird because like she's not fazed by any of this. Like when she saw the whole situation, she was like, "Oh, the ghost of my daughter basically inhabited this child's body. Cool." And she's perfectly fine with that. But because she took the seance for Madame Zandu, I guess that's why she was just like, "Well, we did a seance. Maybe Madame Zandu brought my daughter's spirit back to life." So she's just like, "All right, cool." But Susie's still kind of like in there, and Susie's kind of like fighting it a little bit, But Shauna's basically taken over. Shauna, aka Susie, told Mrs. Sunderland that she's gonna call Abby because she wants Abby to come to the house. Abby, meanwhile, she's at the hospital. She's doing more test results on Alec Holland's situation. Woodrow comes into the room because he was spying on her, and her and Woodrow get into a conversation, and Woodrow was just like, "Leo, the sample that you gave me," he was like, "I need to know where you got the sample from, because from what I've seen, that sample could come up with cures and medicine, and it could save people's lives." And she was just like, "Yeah, I know it could," but she was just like, "You're greedy ass, you and Mr. Sunderland." She was just like, "I don't trust y'all." And then he's just like, "You gotta let me know where it came from." And she's just like, "Kick rocks," because she doesn't trust him. And it's like he just doesn't come across. It's weird that he's so lovingly into his wife and trying to save his wife, because he does not come across as like a likable, compassionate person at all. So, but everybody has their thing. So Abby basically told him to kick rocks. She got the call from from Liz, from Shauna. She got the call from Susie, Shauna, and then she's on her way to the Sunderland house to go see what's going on with them. Swamp Thing now, yeah, Swamp Thing, right? he's having the green is talking to him. The trees end up, talking to him. The trees end up grabbing him, and they start showing him visions of dead bodies all over the place, dead bodies all over the floor. And Swamp Thing himself, he's like, "I don't want to see this shit." He told the swamp, he was just like, "Why are you showing me all of this?" And then the swamp was making him see that. The swamp also, because the swamp was basically bringing out dead spirits and old visions from the past. There was this other gentleman he just appeared in a boat, and he was just walking around in the boat doing some fly fishing. The person who was in the boat, I believe he was the character, like if you watch Doom Patrol, there's like a bootleg Constantine character. You know, he's basically Constantine, but he's not the Constantine that we know. They call him something else, you know, he smokes or whatever the case may be. I believe that was the same actor who was in the Swamp Thing boat. So, hell, I don't know if that was him basically, you know, crossing over on both shows, or is he just playing two completely different characters? But he was basically telling Swamp Thing, he was just like, listen, he was just like, you know, you're not going crazy. He said that the green, and this is the first time they actually mentioned the green. He said that the green, the swamp is trying to show you something. The swamp is trying to teach you something. And he was just like, I don't want to see what they're showing me. He was like, well, you kind of have to. He was like, you can communicate through the swamp. Like, he's like, touch the trees and the trees will show you the past. The trees can show you anything that's happened, you know, for decades. And trust me, the forest has seen it all. So the green knows all. So he was just like, yo, trust in the green, and the green gonna come through. So he's like, all right, cool. So now Abby goes back to the house, and, you know, she goes to the house. She, you know, she apologized to Mr. Sunderland. She's like, I know you don't want me here, but I just came to see Susie to make sure she's okay. She goes upstairs. She's talking to Susie. Susie's like, you know, so now, like, it's not Susie anymore. Like, it's full-blown Shauna. Like, Shauna's in there. Like, we're on some Yu-Gi-Oh shit. Like, the spirit has possessed the child. And then Shauna, she's just like, oh, Abby, you came, you know. She's like, oh, I forgot you're a big doctor now. And then, you know, and then she, you know, and then she was just like, you know, you killed me. I was your friend. And she actually said she was just like, I'm not going to let you or my mom replace me with this nothing Susie Coyle. And then Abby was just like, you know what? She's like, you think you're Shauna? You want to be Shauna? She's like, prove that you're Shauna. And then she called her Wabi, which was basically like Abby backwards, I guess. I mean, I think it would be Waba, but she called her Wabi, and because that was like their thing. Like, they had a song, and Susie was humming the song that she knew when they were a child. She knew about like their nicknames, their reverse nicknames, and then she was just like, you know, and then, you know, and then she started like freaking out, and then like Abby actually saw like Shauna's like dead corpse, and then she was just like, oh, you know, what is, she's like, what do you want, you know? But they did this one thing before that, where before Shauna revealed to Abby that she was Shauna, and Abby was under the impression that it was still Susie. She was taking her temperature, and then before she took her temperature, you know, when Susie said to her, she was like, oh, Abby, I'm surprised that you came. And then Abby was like, why are you surprised that I came? And then Shauna was like, because when people need you the most, you let them down. And if you go back and watch, when she says, because when people need you the most, you're not there for them and you let them down, Abby made this look on her face like, bitch. Like, go back and look at the look that she gives her when she makes that stat. Yo, I died when that happened, because she was just like, how dare you? So anyway, so now, you know, she revealed herself as Shauna, and then she was just like, well, if you're Shauna, what do you want? And then she's like, I want to see you drown, just like you left me in that dirty swamp water, bitch. You know, and she was just like, I'm not going to let you replace me. I'm not going to let you replace me. So then Abby gets mad, and she's just like, you're not Shauna. Shauna is dead. And I was like, well, damn. And so she goes storming downstairs. She runs up on Mrs. Sunderland, and she's like, what have you been telling this girl about Shauna? You've been filling her head. And then she was just like, I didn't know such thing. She was like, she knew the truth about you, bitch. And then she was like, get out of my house before I call the cops. Because Mrs. Sunderland, she knows. Like, Mrs. Sunderland knows that's Shauna. Mrs. Sunderland has accepted the fact that that's Shauna, and we are running this whole thing with Mrs. Sunderland knowing the deals and knowing the magic or whatever. And then she was just like, and then Mrs. Sunderland said, she was like, Madame Xanadu said that you would try to manipulate me and try to tell me this wasn't Shauna. She's like, I know my baby. She's like, get out before I call the cops. So Abby leaves, and she's like, all right, fuck you, bitch. Like, you know, then she goes storming out of the house. Abby gets to her car, and then as soon as she gets to her car, Madame Xanadu pops up, and she's like, Abigail, me done heard my name twice like Beetlejuice. And then she's like, telling me that young Susie isn't inside. And then she was just like, yeah, she's inside. What's going on? She's like, the ghost of Shauna has possessed the child, and Mrs. Sunderland, she's in danger. So then after, when she tells her that, then you see Mrs. Sunderland and you see Shauna, they're in the car and they start driving off. And then Madame Xanadu, she's like, we'll have to go after them because Miss Sunderland, she in trouble. So they get in the car and they're driving after her to try to figure out, you know, like what's going on. while they're in the car together, they start having a conversation. Then she was just like, then Abby was being very like snippy with her the whole time they were in the car. And then Madame Xanadu, she was just like, because Abby said to her, she was just like, you really think you brought Shauna's spirit back from the dead? She was like, me not know, but I know me open the door, and then Shauna would have came true regardless. And then, then she was just like, yo, this can't. She's like, I know Shauna, this ain't Shauna. She's like, yo, both of y'all are crazy. And then Madame Xanadu, she was like, you're still angry with me. And then she was like, yes, I'm still angry with you, because she was like, my mom needed help. She didn't need some kook feeding her head with like spiritual stories and lies. And then she was like, I'm gonna give your mom the help that she asked for. And then she was just like, my mom needed real help. She didn't need you. So apparently there's some backstory here. There was something going on with her mom where her mom felt the need to go to Madame Xanadu for like spiritual counsel. And her mom basically hung on every word that Madame Xanadu had told her. And Abby resents Madame Xanadu for that, because in her words, her mom needed actual help. She didn't need like the lies, in her opinion, the lies that Madame Xanadu was feeding her. So she resents Madame Xanadu for that one, as far as her mom's concerned. So they end up driving down to the bridge. They find the car. The car was parked at the exact same bridge where Shauna had her accident, which killed her. So Abby starts freaking out, and then Susie comes running up, because when Susie and Mrs. Sunderland got to the lake, Shauna's spirit was in the water, because Shauna had said to Mrs. Sunderland at one point, she told her, she was like, Mom, she was like, I can't hold on to Susie's body forever. Eventually Susie's going to take over again. She was just like, but I don't want to be alone. So Mrs. Sunderland went down to the lake where her body was at. She saw Shauna's spirit in the water, and then Mrs. Sunderland starts walking towards her, to be with her daughter. And obviously her daughter was planning on killing her, pulling her down into the water, so both of their spirits can be in that swamp water together. When I guess when Shauna's spirit left Susie's body, Susie woke up, saw what was going on, and Susie bounced. She found Abby. She left. She told Susie to call the cops. She left Susie with Madame Xanadu, and then she went running down there. She tried to talk to Mrs. Sunderland. She told Mrs. Sunderland, she was like, yo, don't go out there. And then she was just like, I killed Shauna. She's like, I'm sorry, I killed Shauna. I think about her every day, and I miss her. She's like, I'm so sorry. And then Mrs. Sunderland turned around, and she was like, hold up, bitch. She was like, don't be sorry. She's like, I don't want you to be sorry. I want you to die. And then she grabbed Abby by the hair and tried to drown her. So now Mrs. Sunderland and Abby are underwater fighting together. The fight broke up. Abby came up, she came up on the surface. Mrs. Sunderland was still down there. And then all of a sudden, Swamp Thing shows up. And then Swamp Thing shows up carrying Mrs. Sunderland's body. He brings her to the shore. Abby gave her CPR. Mrs. Sunderland started breathing again, but she was kind of like passed out on the floor. So then after that, Abby and Swamp Thing, they started having a conversation. And then she told him, she was just like, listen, she was like, like, I saw Shauna. She was just like, I was seeing, she was like, her spirit's in there and something's crazy's going on. And then Swamp Thing was just like, yeah, because then she said to Swamp Thing, she was like, how did you know? She was like, how'd you know that I was here? And then he was like, I saw you, through the trees. And then she was like, that's not possible. And he was like, bitch, it's been 5 episodes. You still talking about how certain things can't happen. So he was just like, let me show you the power of the green. So he touches one of the trees, he touches Abby, and he takes Abby back to the night where Shauna, quote unquote, died, where Abby and Shauna, as 17-year-olds, I guess they were 17 or 18, because they were talking about graduating in 2 days. So they ended up driving to the bridge, and then Shauna wanted to jump off the bridge and dive into the river. Abby didn't want to do it because she was the goody two shoes. Shauna kept telling her, she was like, yo, don't be a loser, don't be a square. So then Abby decides to be cool for once, and then she pushed Shauna off the bridge, and Shauna fell into the water. Now I thought that's how she died, but apparently when she fell into the water, Abby started freaking out because Shauna never came back up. Young Abby dives into the water to go save Shauna. Shauna pops her head up. She was like, I was just kidding, bitch, and then she was like, don't scare me like that. And then the two of them are just like in the water, just floating. And then all of a sudden, something grabbed Shauna and pulled Shauna underwater, and that's how Shauna died. So this whole time, Abby was blaming herself because I guess she thought her pushing Shauna off the bridge killed her, and the part about the two of them floating together and Shauna being pushed down, I guess she blocked that out of her mind and just always stuck with the notion that she killed Shauna, but then Swamp Thing showed her the truth. And then when they snapped out of the vision, Abby was just like, wow, she was just like, yo, something dragged her under. And then she was like, what was it? And he was like, the greed. But he was just like, something. He's like, he said there's a bigger force at play here, something that we don't understand, but at least now I hope you actually weren't responsible for Shauna's death. So hopefully she can get that burden like off of her shoulders. And then Maddie showed up. Officer Maddie showed up. He saw Abby, put his jacket around her, gave her a hug. Swamp Thing dipped, and then he looked over at Maddie and was like, because like every time like Maddie and Abby get close, like Swamp Thing's always like right there. And then the two of them, like Abby and Swamp Thing, just looked at each other, and then that's how that ended. Woodrow ended up going back to Alec Holland's laboratory. He found like Swamp Thing pieces on the floor. He took a bunch of samples, started analyzing them, and then he realized that the samples were from an actual like person, like a creature, like a plant creature person. He goes down to the hospital because Mrs. Sunderland now, she's in the hospital. Avery's in the hospital. Woodrow rolls up on Avery. He's just like, yo, bro. Like, he was just like, I need a sample. He said, I need to study this person. There's a plant monster creature out there. That's where Abby got her shit from. And I need to catch this creature so I can study it. So then, Avery gives him the number of somebody that could do the job to catch Swamp Thing. Woodrow takes the number and he's like, all right, I'm gonna call these people and we gonna go get this green-eyed monster. And then when Avery turns around, his wife was looking dead at him. Like she was looking dead at him, like she was looking at him like, motherfucker, I was in the hospital down on my deathbed and you standing outside discussing business with this dude. And then Avery gave the oh shit look, and then like that's how that whole thing ended. Which is pretty interesting. And this was the moment where we went through the whole thing with Shauna, and because the thing about Swamp Thing, like we did have a 2-second Alec Holland moment where he was just like visioning, he was just like reminiscing on Alec Holland stuff. But when you think about the whole situation with Madame Xanadu and Abby, with the situation with her mom, with the whole thing about, Abby and Dr. Sunderland, the whole thing about Abby and Shauna and the Sunderland family and the whole dynamic. I'm like, this show isn't like, they got the nerve to call this show a Swamp Thing. This show is about Abby Arcane. Like the show is it's called Swamp Thing, but the show is about her. This is Abby Arcane's show. They just can't call it The Adventures of Abby Arcane because nobody knows who she is. Like, the whole show is basically Abby doing what Abby does, us learning Abby's backstory, going into Abby's life, Abby's situation. And then in the last 5 minutes of the movie, when Abby gets in trouble, Swamp Thing pops up to remind everybody why he's on the title and to save Abby's ass from, from whatever danger. But also, at the same time, it makes perfect sense because he's a swamp creature. It's not like we can have 40 minutes of Swamp Thing just walking around the town, like dripping, like dripping wet and, dripping leaves. And if the show was actually about Swamp Thing, it would just be 40 minutes of him walking around in a circle talking about the greed. So I understand why the show is actually about Abby, because she's the one who can actually do stuff. It's just funny to me because it's called Swamp Thing when the show is clearly about Abby Arcane. So now, off to the side characters. So after the sheriff and Avery Sunderland got it on, she was saying that Liz was Liz's girlfriend, like Liz was basically investigating the Alec Holland death. She said that Liz's girlfriend found some boat information that had some holes in Holland's boat, which could lead to Alec's death. There was also another person who was in the swamp that night who could also shed some light on the situation. So she was saying how she was going to go look into it. Avery kind of got mad because he was just like, that reporter's getting on my damn nerves. And then she was just like, well, I got to investigate it. So, she got dressed and then she bounced. She goes down to, because again, there was a second person who was, who was on the swamp that night. She ended up going down to that person. And then she was just like, well, did you see anything? And then he was just like, yeah, I saw your boy Matty standing on the docks with a shotgun and blew up Alec Holland's boat. And I was just like, oh, shit. So apparently the person who shot Alec, because remember, Alec took 2 to the chest and then the boat got blown up. That was basically Maddie who did that. Like Maddie, and then the guy also said he was just like, because he tried to extort her, because he was like, I know that your son was the one that killed Alec Holland. and he was using Avery Sunderland's boat. So between your son killing Alec Holland, using Avery's boat to do it, so I know they're in cahoots, and that's your son, so I know you're in cahoots. He was like, if y'all don't pay me like $50 million, it was 50, 40 something, I forgot, it was money. He was like, if y'all don't pay me ransom money, I won't tell the world that all you had something to do with Alec Holland's death. And then she pulled out her gun and killed him, put one right in his brain. And then she was just like, nobody threatens my son. And then, she shot him a couple of times. And then, but now she didn't know before that her son killed Alec Holland. So now that she knows, she's going to confront her son, obviously, in the next episode. And she's not going to arrest him. So they're going to try to find out a way to keep, she's going to try to find a way to keep her son safe. And also she's probably going to look into what Avery had to do with this whole thing to begin with. Avery Sunderland, he ends up going down to Liz's dad's restaurant, because Delroy's restaurant, because apparently he owns the property that Delroy's restaurant is on. I don't know if he owns the restaurant or just the property. So he rolls up on Delroy and he's just like, listen, your daughter's been looking into my affairs and I'd appreciate it if you tell her to stop. And then Liz comes charged it and she's just like, yo, beat it, Pops, I can take care of this old fool. And then she was just like, yo, back off, Sunderland. And he was just like, first of all, he was making turtle soup and that shit was nasty. I just want to throw that out there. So the two of them now are having the argument. They're just like, he's just like, why don't you just back off? You ain't got no evidence. And then she was like, what happened to your accountant? And she was like, the motherfucker went on vacation. And then he was like, if you don't want something to happen to you and your pappy, I suggest you back off, if something happened to you. And then, then he leaves. So he gets mad and he leaves. So then later on, Liz she's at her dad's bar now. And she was keeping an eye on her dad throughout the course of the entire day because she was afraid that something bad was going to happen to him. So now she's on dad watch. The Blue Devil, he tried to leave the town. Like, he dead ass tried to dip because he was just like, listen, I'm sick of this curse. He was like, I know I was here to protect Abby Arcane. In the last episode, she was in trouble. She's about to get shot. I saved her ass. So I should be able to leave now. He tried to leave, and there's a sign that says, thank you for coming to Moray, Louisiana. He tried to go past that sign, and his entire arm caught fire, and it lit up blue. So he was just like, okay, I guess I can't leave. And then he went in the trunk where there was the Blue Devil costume that he wore in the movie that he shot. And then when he walked away, you saw that the mask, like the eyes for the mask, like lit up blue. So the mask is alive. And then he said out his mouth, if I would have known this was going to happen, I would have never made that deal to begin with. So there's more at play here to this pact, this agreement. Because even Madame Xanadu brought it up. She was like, you made the agreement. So like he made a deal with the devil, basically. And we're going to find more about, the deal that he cut, like later on as the season progresses. Although, again, we're halfway done here. So he ends up going to the bar. He's talking to Liz because his whole thing is, he can't leave. And he's accepted the fact that he can't leave now. So he's just like, screw it. And then Liz actually told him that at one point she did leave. She went to New York, for a reporting job. She was there for a year. And all they had her do was basically correct typos and make corrections on other people's stuff. And she said she never actually reported the news. So when her father had a heart scare, she came back home. And then she just decided to stay because she said she actually does like it there. So then, she leaves. She goes to the parking lot. And then Avery Sunderland got his goons on Liz. And I felt some kind of way about that because I'm starting to like Liz. It's like Liz is starting to become my favorite character. Like the goons ran up on Liz. Blue Devil shows up, Danielle, like I keep calling him Blue Devil. Daniel and Liz end up, like fighting the goons off. Well, Liz fought the goons off. And then Daniel got hit in the head with a crowbar by one of them. Daniel hits the ground. Liz calls for an ambulance and then the goons leave. And now Liz knows that Avery Sunderland flat out just tried to get her killed. And then, so Daniel's down for the count. She ends up calling the hospital. And then that's how that whole thing is. So that was it. So we're getting, this episode was about everybody. This episode was the funny thing is this episode was about everybody but Swamp Thing. I mean, the best thing that happened with him was his power. I mean, well, I can't say that really because he has more power now. We're more open to what he can do. We've looked into the eyes of, he's aware of the green now. So he's starting to get more of a handle on his power and everything. So we'll see his power progress as we go forward. But the funny thing is, we're not going to see his power for his own purposes. the whole point of him learning about his powers is to help Abby because the show is about Abby Arcane. But that was it. I'm looking forward to getting more deep into the Blue Devil stuff. I actually want to know more about like Liz's situation, you know, like what's going on with Liz's family. I want to know more about Abby's family, you know, with her mom and the whole thing with like, you know, her uncle or her dad or, you know, whatever the CW decides to turn the storyline into from the comic away from the comic book. But like usually when shows like this happen, you try to focus on like one particular person. And yeah, you'll enjoy a side mission with a side person, but you're really focused on like one person in particular. This is one of the few situations where I literally want to know what's going on with everybody. Like they should have just called the show Moray. Like instead of Swamp Thing, instead of The Adventures of Abby Arcane, the damn show should have just been called Moray. But but that was it. In this particular episode, leave a comment. Let me know out of all the characters, whose storyline are you more interested in? Like, whose storyline do you want to know more about? Like, who are you getting into? Who are the characters that are standing out, and which ones don't you like? Like I said, as we dive into it, I said we're halfway done with Swamp Thing. 5 more episodes to go, and then we're gonna get into some other stuff. We're gonna get into some Titans, hopefully, and then we'll kick off round 2 of DC TV reviews. So thank you for tuning in, everybody. Check me out on social media as always. And for the green, until next time, take care. And I'm out this bitch.